This is what's left of a tragic Saturday morning shooting that left 2 dead and 3 children without parents.
Police are now working to piece together what happened.
Given the young age of the children, that becomes very difficult for us to do, to interview, children in that age group.
They say the suspect may have been injured or stabbed in the break-in.
The prime suspect in this double homicide, Albert Johnson, his wife, Sina Johnson, is behind bars.
In the home, 3 children, all ages 4 and under.
We're dealing with 2 parents that have been murdered, possibly in the presence of these children. We don't know.
Detectives say Albert Johnson shot and killed Tony and Catherine Butterfield early Saturday morning during what they're calling a home invasion robbery. 29-year-old Sina Johnson was busted and booked late Monday after police say she lied to them regarding what she knew about the crime, her husband's alleged involvement in it, and his whereabouts, and that she also destroyed evidence.
The couple leaving behind 3 young children who were inside the home when the shooting happened.
The tragedy is indescribable.
My brother called me at 4 o'clock in the morning on Saturday morning, and I thought he was kidding with me. I thought he was playing some sort of a joke or something. I didn't believe him. Tony and Catherine were just good salt of the earth kind of people. With their smiles, their willingness to help out everybody. Just great people.
And we've got big news in this story tonight. We know a lot more now about the Butterfield murders in Utah. A lot more details coming forward and what's happening in the prosecution of this case. Let's begin. Sergeant J.C. Holt, describing the details of this murder.
Yeah, he came in, he forced entry into the home. He went upstairs to the bedroom where the Butterfields are sleeping, woke them up, had them come downstairs. There was obviously some talk and dialogue about where money was and his motivations for being there. The home, rather, he didn't leave, but he exited the home and with $20 and 2 cell phones. And then he went back out to his car, realized that he didn't have his car keys, turned around, walked back to the house, presumably through the back door again, where he was confronted by Tony and, standing in the doorway. Now he is not masked, and Tony recognizes him and says, "Why? Why are you doing this?" Then we know that there was a confrontation with Tony and Mr. Johnson, where Tony had the knife. And that is where Mr. Johnson told investigators post Miranda that he shot Tony, and then in turn turned and shot Catherine as she watched or observed him shooting Tony. He did mention, though, that Mr. Butterfield was stabbing him or attacking him with a knife as he tried to make re-entry, and that it hurt a lot, and that is why he shot both of them. Well, that's why he shot Mr. Butterfield, and then he said that Mrs. Butterfield screamed, and then he shot her.
And again, that is all based upon, it seems, in part on the words of the defendant himself. Now, he refers to him as Mr. Johnson, but Al Johnson has an AKA that's on record. It's a Psycho Al, all right? Let me bring in Julie Grant. Julie, I know you've been taking a look at this story today and speaking with the prosecutor in this one. But just that description of what happened and the evidence, and if this is true, he commits a robbery, an armed robbery, and then is going back into the house and then allegedly commits these murders.
Exactly, Vinny. This started out as just an armed robbery, according to officials, that he went in with a mask, and they have a really big piece of evidence able to obtain. And this is something pretty unique. I mean, you've covered a lot of cases, tried a lot of cases, and it's not often we see inside surveillance video in a home. But this home had it, and that surveillance video shows him doing all those things, from going upstairs into the couple's bedroom, taking them downstairs in their undergarments into the kitchen, and committing that armed robbery, according to officials. And then where things escalate, there's a break when he leaves, they discovered. But then when he returns, he's unmasked. And Tony Butterfield is able to identify him. I had a long conversation with the district attorney in Salt Lake County, Utah. Sim Gill is his name, and he told me that's where everything changed, right? The initial motivation was money. Apparently, This individual, Albert Johnson, this defendant, was having financial problems and went in for money, but was recognized by Tony Butterfield. And the DA confirmed to me, Vinny, that these two knew each other. I asked him about a couple published reports that I had read that Albert Johnson had applied for work at the couple's landscaping company and was turned down. And the DA would not confirm that, but just said that they can confirm that they knew each other and that it was in that confession that the sergeant just told us about, where Albert Johnson said that Tony Butterfield identified him, he recognized him, and he asked him why. That was what he came out of his mouth. He named him and then said why.
You also talked to the prosecutor about the charges here. Let's take a listen.
We filed 10 counts against Mr. Johnson, 2 counts of aggravated murder, 2 counts of aggravated robbery, 2 counts of aggravated kidnapping, 1 count of aggravated burglary, 2 counts of possession of a firearm by a restricted person, and 1 count of obstruction of justice. Those first the first 7 counts are first-degree felonies. The 2 aggravated murder charges have a potential as capital offenses. So these are very, very serious, obviously, charges, and those were filed early yesterday morning. Prior to that, Mr. Johnson was extradited, brought in from California, and he got into our county jail the night before, and then we had our press conference and the filing of charges yesterday morning.
All right, so Julie, if the charges have been filed, my guess is at some point they're going to be in a courtroom, perhaps with a preliminary hearing or a probable cause hearing.
Yes, you are exactly right. Within a couple days, Vinny, he'll make his first court appearance. And yes, then the preliminary hearing after that will be the next step. And one thing I did ask the district attorney about was whether they may pursue capital punishment in this case. They can in the state of Utah. And he said because that is such a weighty decision, they have some time before they need to make that announcement and put the defense on notice as to whether or not they will pursue it. So as of tonight, no decision has been made, but they're going to be very thoroughly going through everything. I mean, this guy just got back into the state of Utah within the past 48 hours, being held again with no bail, and will make that initial appearance. But then they're going to go through everything. And there is a penalty enhancement already because they say he had this firearm that he was prohibited from having, Vinny. He does have a prior criminal history. And while the DA would not detail it with me, he would say he's got a prior conviction, we know, for aggravated battery with serious bodily injury. And that prior felony prohibited him from even touching a weapon in the first place, let alone going back to this home and allegedly shooting and killing both Tony and Catherine Butterfield.
Yeah, and Julie, as we described the evidence in this case, alleged confession, the interior surveillance video, the forensic evidence they're going to have, the wife who also provided some evidence against him, she's also been charged, seems overwhelming. And we say that in a lot of cases. But as I look at this one, I mean, this really seems overwhelming. And it seems that with the confession and the video and everything else that's happening, I think it's ultimately going to come down to whether or not they decide to seek the death penalty here. And that's ultimately what this whole thing may end up being about.
Yes, you're exactly right. And that may trigger whether or not it goes to trial, right? Because we know we have a confession, and the district attorney and the sergeant we spoke to both made it very clear that this confession was made voluntarily. They used the word Mirandized, meaning a defendant's read their rights pursuant to the famous case, Miranda versus Arizona. And he willingly agreed to speak to them and told them what occurred. And so you think when you have a confession, you have video of the incident, or at least part of the incident. We haven't been able to view it, and no one in the public will see it unless it's introduced as a piece of evidence at a trial or made part of the public record. When you have all of that, that, as you said, is very, very overwhelming, you wonder if it'll make it to the point of trial, and perhaps the penalty that is on or off the table might be the factor in this case. And also other witnesses like his wife, who is a co-defendant in this case, and who knows if she may become a state's witness in the end. A lot to follow, and certainly we'll be watching as he makes his first court appearance in a couple days, Vinny.
Absolutely. Another one of the cases that we're tracking here on Court TV. Julie Grant, thank you so much.